Okay, so as y'all already know, WWE 2K24 has already been announced. The WWE announced it on the 22nd earlier this week, and I'm not gonna lie, this shit looks fire. And what's cool about it is we already got a release date. According to it, it says March 8th, 2024, so that's like 2 months. Now, I'm gonna keep real with you, and I put this in my community post. It's been a minute since I've been hyped for a 2K game. It's been a minute since I've been hyped for a WWE game. I think the last time I was really excited for one was like 2K16. 2K14 was a hit. I loved it. 2K15, depending on what console generation you played it on, it was a good runner-up. And then 16 had the Stone Cold Showcase, and I was excited for that. After that, man, I low-key fell off from the series. I kind of gave up on WWE games after the release of 2K20. That shit was god-fucking awful. Then they took a year break, came back with 2K22, and the shit was grand. The gameplay was better, there was nowhere near as many lags as 2K20. Everything seemed more fluid. You could tell they took their time with it. Then after that, we got 2K23. 2K23 for me was the same as 2K22, but better in my opinion. For me, I think the online was a lot more fluid. We had John Cena for the showcase mode. I put so many fucking hours into 2K23. I loved it. And now we got 2K24. And from what I've seen, this might be probably the best 2K game I will play in the past 10 years. I know I said that for 23, but I think 24 is going to blow 23 out the park. Now, there's things that I know for sure is going to be in the game, and there's things that I hope make it. So we just going to start off with the things that I know for sure is going to be in it. Number one, they're bringing back casket matches. They're bringing back ambulance matches, special guest referees, gauntlet matches. These are just the 4 game modes I know for sure they're bringing back. Now, I'm excited not just because of the match types, but also because of what I think might come after it. So, casket matches is simple enough. Remember the Buried Alive matches back in like the early SmackDown vs. Raw games? It's kind of like that, but instead of dragging your opponent all the way up to the ramp and then putting them in the casket's at the ring, which is cool, but me personally, I hope they do it Buried Alive style. Me personally, I think that would be the better way to do it rather than having a casket at the side, but either way, I'm cool with it coming back. Ambulance matches. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I've seen an ambulance match in any of the games. I remember someone saying that it was in SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 for the DS version, but I've never seen an ambulance match in SmackDown vs. Raw or 2K games. For y'all who probably don't know, ambulance is kind of like casket, but rather than putting your opponent in a casket, you have to drag him to the top and throw him in the back of an ambulance. Ambulance drives out with the unconscious victim and you win the match. I think between that and the casket match, I'm more excited for ambulance because due to me playing the Buried Alive matches back in the SmackDown vs. Raw games and not really playing the ambulance ones, I'm excited to play this one in 2K24. Now in comes my second point. I think what these game modes could do is bring back other game modes that kind of do the same thing, on the grounds of their gimmick matches, but they do them differently. For example, Inferno matches. I fucking miss Inferno matches. In-game. And when I say Inferno, I'm not talking about what they did in like WWE 13 to 2K15. I'm talking like that SmackDown vs. Raw Inferno match style, where the ring itself, the ropes are on fire, and the longer the match goes on, the higher the flames go. With the 300 degrees meter in the corner. I miss those type of matches. I hope they bring that one back. And that my reasoning for that on why I think they might bring it back goes into a later point I have with the whole 40 years of WrestleMania thing. But I'm hoping that one comes back. But hearing the game modes that we have already, that have already been announced, already got me excited. I don't know what other additions they're going to add other than the 4 that have been announced, but I am excited to see what they do with it. Now on to the next thing I'm hyped as hell for. 40 years of WrestleMania. Now, I have one critique about it, but I'm going to save that after I praise it. That by itself makes me think that this might be the biggest roster-sized game we've seen in who knows how long. Like, I remember how big 2K14's roster was with the 30 years of WrestleMania. Like, half the roster you unlocked in that game was from that game mode. So between 30 plus years of WrestleMania and the current roster that we have now, the roster size is going to be huge. Now, y'all know I love 30 years of WrestleMania back in 2K14, and if it's anything like that, I'm gonna love it in 2K24. Being able to relive all those moments of WrestleMania and being able to relive the past 10 years we've had between now and 2K14, I'm excited. Reliving Brock Lesnar ending Undertaker's streak, that happened the year 2K14 was released. So we didn't get to play through it like we did the other WrestleManias that came before it. Now we get to play through that shit. And as a person who was there, not at WrestleMania 30, but I have a clear memory of what happened that year. I'm hyped as fuck. Speaking of which, if they're doing the whole 40 years of WrestleMania, I'm hoping they bring back the beat the streak mode that 2K14 had with The Undertaker. I'm hoping they do that shit with this one. I mean, it's only fitting. The dude has the longest record for WrestleMania wins out of anybody else in WWE history, so it only makes sense to do a part 2 of it 10 years later. And I know some of the people who are part of the past 10 years of WrestleMania, a few of them are in AEW, but I'm hoping we get to replay Daniel Bryan winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 30. That whole storyline between Daniel Bryan and the Authority and him having to win those titles, the WWE Championship, that whole year, that shit was magic. So being able to relive it in this one, hopefully relive it, because I don't know how they're going to do it with him being in AEW, but being able to have the chance to relive that shit, that's another thing that gets me hyped. I'm also hoping they add WrestleMania moments that they didn't have in 2K14, because 2K14, even though they did 30 years of WrestleMania, they left out a few parts. Like, for example, Edge spearing Jeff Hardy off the ladder at WrestleMania 17. How the fuck was that not added? But it seems like 10 years later, when it comes to like licensing and people being in other parts of wrestling and other businesses, I feel like the WWE has been a lot more lenient. So hopefully we get to see moments like that in WWE 2K24. The Undertaker returning at WrestleMania 20, that's another thing that wasn't in 2K14. All that nonetheless, I'm excited for this game. Whether they add the things I want them to add or don't, I'm still happy knowing the game modes that we know for sure we're getting and the 40 years of WrestleMania. Which reminds me, before I forget, there's 2 things I want to jot down. Number 1, speaking of Undertaker's return at WrestleMania 20, I really fucking hope they do that simply for the fact that Kane was using Slow Chemical in 2004. I don't know why they changed it in 2008, but to this day, I feel like Slow Chemical is that man's best entrance music ever. Like, I remember watching him back in like 2006, 2007. I mean, don't get it twisted, I was scared as hell of him. I was a kid. But that entrance music was fire. Pun intended. So if they do use that and they decide to use early 2000s Kane, they have to use like pre-2008. I need Slow Chemical back in these games. We haven't seen that since like SmackDown vs. Raw 2008. I think that was the last WWE game where he used that as his entrance music. But that's just a me thing. Whether they add it or not, it's not going to change the quality of the game, but I'll be happy as hell. Also, before I forget, this is the second thing I was talking about. This is the critique I mentioned in the beginning. 40 years of WrestleMania, this can either be really fucking amazing, or depending on how they do it, bad. Simply for the fact that technically, they already did this in 2K14 with 2K14's 30 years of WrestleMania, where we relived 30 years of WrestleMania. So now it's like, okay, we're doing 40 years now. So technically we're reliving the past 10 years, because if you didn't play 2K14, this is all new to you. But if you play 2K14 and you relived the 30 years already, are you just going to take the matches that you did in 2K14 and then revamp them in a 2K24 way? Like, y'all see what I'm saying? Depending on how they do it, this could be bad, because if they take the lazy cash grab route, they can just take every match they did in 2K14 and just put it in this. I mean, I'd still play it. I mean, shit, playing 2K14 game modes with 2K24 gameplay, that sounds fun, but it's like, how are you gonna do this? Like, that's also why I brought up the whole, are you gonna add new, like, other matches from WrestleMania into 2K24, like the ones that you left out, to, you know, add something new, rather than just giving us everything that we had in the 30-year game mode. Are you gonna give us that and more, plus the extra 10 years between the 30 and the 40. Y'all see what I'm saying? But me personally, if I was doing this, I know it's coming up at WrestleMania 40. I don't have a problem with them doing 40 years of WrestleMania, but as a plan B, in case this shit didn't work out, I'd just bring back Road to WrestleMania. That way you could still have like all the WrestleMania maps, all the WrestleMania arenas in the game. You know, kind of like its own homage to 40 years of WrestleMania, while also creating new original stories like they did in SmackDown vs. Raw 2009. But that's only if this goes bad. But I don't think that's going to happen. I have real high hopes for 2K24. It's coming out in like a month and a half, so I'm fucking excited for it. Hopefully this game doesn't make me eat my words, but if it's anything like 2K22 and 2K23, I know this game's going to be good. All it's missing is a good soundtrack. You know, like that's another thing. Like the old SmackDown vs. Raw games, they all had their own soundtracks and they were all fire as hell. I'm hoping they bring like that back. I wasn't really a fan of the soundtrack in 2K23. 2K22's was cool, but I'm hoping they bring that shit back. Other than that, that's all I got for y'all. I'm hyped as hell for 2K24. Let me know how you're feeling about it. Do you like it? Did you give up on the series even after 22 and 23 released? How do you feel about 2K24? I wanna hear from y'all. But that's all I got for y'all. I appreciate y'all watching this episode of Reggie TV, and I'm out.